Hello, class. Hope you're doing well. Today, I want to go over the CRAAP credibility test, which is a method of discerning whether a source for use in the argumentative essay is credible or not. So this handy little slideshow will help you figure that out. So why do we establish credibility? Well, we must engage with the literature of the field to find sources of information that are credible, valid, and relevant to your topic of inquiry. This engagement should also help you refine your scope and the definitions associated with your inquiry. So we learn from the process of research as well. You must be able to explain why certain sources are more relevant and or significant to your topic than others. The dangers of not establishing credibility. The internet is an amazing tool, but it is full of fake news, questionable sources, and work produced by agenda-driven agents. Therefore, establishing credibility is crucial to maintaining one's scholarly integrity. And then here I have a link to the Flat Earth Society if you want to know how bad the situation can get when you don't establish credibility and you don't consider the word of authentic scientists. So the CRAAP acronym is a checklist, basically, that you go down for each one of these letters, and you determine, based on the source's ability to meet each of these requirements, whether or not it is credible. Now, we establish credibility because it's like if you went to a doctor's office and you were going to get x-rayed, you wouldn't want the x-ray technician to be just any old person off the street, right? Somebody who came in that morning, never had any experience with x-rays, and they're just zapping you with radiation, right? We want the person who is administering the x-ray to be a credible individual, to be someone who has gone to school for the purpose of learning how to be a radiation technician, and therefore is not going to harm us because they don't know what they're doing. The same is true for any sort of research that we do. A lot of times when you go out on the internet, there's a lot of stuff that's just not very good. And sometimes stuff that can look legit and can look useful, but is it really? How often do you check to make sure you know exactly where the source material is coming from? Probably not very often. So going through the CRAAP acronym can help you establish that. Now, the first one is currency, and that means how close to the present moment is it, because you don't want to use stuff that's too old. The next one is relevance. That's how relevant is it to the topic at hand? Is it peripherally relevant? Is it directly relevant? Then we have authority. Who is the person writing this? Are they a person who has authority on a certain topic? If you're doing a scientific topic, is this a scientist or is this somebody with a blog on the internet on imright.com or some ridiculous thing like that? The next is accuracy. Can you verify independently whether or not the information that the individual is using is accurate? And then the final is purpose. Why was this information created? Unfortunately, a lot of the times information can be influenced by the people who are designing the parameters of the study or funding the study or whatever, or maybe it's a nonprofit organization that has a specific political agenda and they're funding the study, so they're obviously going to fund studies to find things that they want. So you have to ask yourself, why was it created? Is this made in the good faith inquiry of the truth, or is this made because somebody wanted a certain piece of information to be circulated a certain way? Okay, so currency. Testing the currency of a source means examining the timeliness of the information. To test a source's currency, ask and answer the following questions. When was the information published or posted? Has the information been revised or updated? Does my topic require current information, or will older sources work as well? And are the links functional? Because a lot of times if a source is older, the links won't work. Most topics require fairly current information. I would say for the purpose of the research paper, 5 years. But even 5 years, if you're dealing with something highly scientific, you want to stay as close to the current moment as you can. Now, the challenge that we face in this class using Galileo is that a lot of times the stuff that gets the full texts that get put up on Galileo have already run their circulation in publication, which means they're a little bit older. So I can't really be a huge stickler on how current the stuff needs to be. But if you start using information from 50 or more years ago, 20, 30 even. We've found out so much since the time I've been alive that you really want to stay as current as possible because you run the risk of using old and disproven information. The next is relevance. How relevant is this source to the task at hand? Testing the relevance of a source means determining the importance of the information for your needs. To test a source's relevancy, ask and answer the following questions. Does the information relate to your topic or answer your question? Who is the intended audience, right? Because if it's super advanced, you may not be able to understand it. And if it's super elementary, it may not be the level that you want. So there is kind of like a, Goldilocks and the Three Bears sort of sweet spot for the kind of information that we can use. We need it to be academic enough for a college setting, but not so academic and so heady as to be too esoteric for us to interpret. We need to be able to read it and understand it. A lot of times if there's a lot of medical jargon or stuff that we don't understand, we can't even really do anything with that kind of a source. Is the information at an appropriate level? This is what I was just mentioning. Is it elementary or advanced? We want to try to find it right in the middle, right? Have you looked at a variety of sources before determining this is the one you will use? You really do need to do kind of like a shotgun approach to research. You need to do a lot of research before you make these decisions. I know it can be kind of a pain to pilfer through the articles and stuff like that, but it really is important, especially if you want to get a good grade on the second essay. And then the last one is, would you be comfortable citing the source in your paper? Okay. The authority. Testing the authority of a source means to evaluate the origins of the information. So to test a source's authority, ask and answer the following questions. Who is the author, publisher, source, or sponsor? That is a huge one. A lot of these nonprofit websites and stuff that students find, and they have all these statistics and they think they're really, really good. But if you go and look at who publishes it, they're people without credibility, without expertise in the field. So you want to make sure that you know who the author and the publisher is and that you can vet their credibility. What are their credentials or organizational affiliations? Is this a professor? Is it a scientist? Is it a doctor? Is it someone who has that established, what we call the established ethos, right? The appeal to credibility or appeal to authority? Are they qualified to write on the topic? Remember, being credible generally doesn't mean you're credible on a specific niche subject. So you want to make sure that the individual is, like, you wouldn't want to quote an engineer on matters of biochemistry. Right? Even though technically an engineer is an expert and a biochemist is an expert, their areas of expertise are niche. They're not relatable. So there's no guarantee, even though the engineer may be smart and he may know something about biochemistry, there's no guarantee that he knows enough about it to be considered an expert. So you want to be careful. It's not just general credibility, it's credibility in the area of expertise. Is there contact information, such as a publisher or email address? A lot of the times, if the person is legit, they'll give you a way to contact them. And does the URL reveal anything about the author or source? .com, .edu, .gov, .org, .net. A lot of times .gov, .edu, those are sources that are generally considered better because they have that sort of academic credibility already worked in, although there are varying degrees of acceptability for that as well. Accuracy. Testing the accuracy of a source means evaluating the reliability, truthfulness, and correctness of the content. To test a source accuracy, ask and answer the following questions. Where does the information come from? Is the information supported by evidence? Has the information been reviewed or refereed? Can I verify any of the information in another source from personal knowledge? You have to be careful with that one, but if you know for a fact that based on your sort of awareness of another source or your personal expertise in a specific area, if you know from personal knowledge that the information is verified. Does the language or tone seem unbiased and free of emotion? That's a huge one. Seeming biased, like seeming like you know that you're right and everyone else is wrong and all that stuff, that even if you are right, you can really do some damage to yourself by seeming unbiased. And to be honest, nobody worth their salt would let bias creep into their writing like that. It's just not professional. And then are there spelling, grammar, or typographical errors? Again, a person who's worth their salt is going to make sure that that stuff is at a bare minimum. Sometimes you find typos. I find typos all the time in like books and stuff like that. They do get through, but if you have a lot of them, it's probably safe to say that that person isn't very vetted. It's not a person that you want to be quoting. And then the last is purpose. Testing the purpose of a source means determining the reason the information exists. To test a source's purpose, ask and answer the following questions. What is the purpose of the information, and do the authors make the purpose clear? Is it to inform, to teach, to sell, to entertain, or to persuade? The purpose matters because if the purpose is to inform, the standards are going to be much higher. If the purpose is to entertain, they're not going to be so high, right? So knowing the purpose lets you know how valuable the information might be. Is the information fact, opinion, or propaganda? So we know that fact is stuff that can't really be argued. It's apparent from the evidence at hand. Opinions are things that people believe which may or may not have any bearing in reality, right? It's my opinion that the moon is made of cheese. Well, isn't that great? And then propaganda is like stuff that media that's intended to persuade, usually for a political purpose or like an agenda-based purpose. It's not always nefarious and evil, but a lot of the times it is. So if you see propaganda that's it's clear that they're trying to influence you in an unjust way or a way that makes you feel uneasy, then maybe that source isn't for you. Does the point of view appear objective and impartial? Again, maintaining objectivity, trying to remove yourself from yourself so that your personal biases do not creep in is a mark of a talented rhetorician, someone who has done their homework and who knows how to communicate. And are there political, ideological, cultural, religious, institutional, personal biases? If you can detect any of these kinds of biases, it's probably not a good source. Now, everyone is biased to a certain degree, but people who are worth their salt can remove themselves in large part from their own biases, or at least will make the attempt to do so and to seem as though they are doing so. So if you get the feeling that this person is totally sure and kind of uninterested in evidence to the contrary, that kind of thing, then maybe you don't want to use it. Also, unfortunately, even in the scientific world, sometimes the purpose of certain studies and things can be nefarious. Like I remember Philip Morris, the tobacco company, when it became apparent that cigarettes were killing people left and right, they funded studies to try to make cigarettes look less dangerous. And of course, the controls of those studies were nefarious. They were looking at things that weren't really significant to the overall picture of health. And they were trying to do damage control. So all of that information has that slant of like trying to protect the pocketbooks of a major tobacco conglomerate so that information wouldn't be usable. There's a lot of stuff like that. You want to be really careful. Who is funding this? Who is behind the research? And have they done their due diligence in setting up controls to make sure that bias doesn't creep into the research? Because just doing a study doesn't mean that you've done anything. You can do a study and do it incorrectly, and that study can be useless, right? Our society is very oriented with, oh, well, studies show. Well, what studies? What are the controls? Who put them on? Who financed them? Were they experts? Were they credible? All of that stuff is what you should be asking yourself when you're looking at this information. Do not accept anything at face value. Learning to develop a critical mind and to be skeptical of information is a crucial step in developing in higher education. So please make sure that you do that. So if you follow the CRAAP acronym, as I've just laid it out for you, you can make sure that your stuff is credible. In published scholarly research, it is not the practice to provide an explanation of the credibility of every source used. Although it is important that you engage in due diligence in finding and using credible sources, what is most important is that you use sources that are relevant and significant to your topic of inquiry. You should be able to explain why certain sources are relevant and significant with the understanding that the sources are already credible as evidenced by the citation entry in the references or bibliography section of your paper. So you don't actually have to explain to your reader that they're credible, but you need to vet this on your own personal time. Okay, and then this is just like a little activity. If you want to do this to practice your ability to tell whether something is credible, you can. This slideshow is included on Blackboard. But if you follow the CRAAP acronym and you go through each of those letters and you check the source that you find, and you find that the source passes the test, then it's good to use for your essay. Please make sure that you pay attention to credibility and that you go through the CRAAP credibility test. Because if you let sources that are questionable creep into your essay, that's going to be a deduction, unfortunately. There's a lot of crap out there on the internet, so we have to be really careful. As always, please email me with any questions, and I hope you have an excellent week.